deaf little girl signed "Thank you" to the waitress. The CEO behind her asked, "Where did you learn?" Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. It was a chilly Tuesday afternoon, and the streets of downtown were bustling as usual. Inside a cozy, quiet diner on the corner, the hum of conversation and the clinking of silverware filled the air. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling pancakes lingered in the air, adding to the warmth that contrasted with the crisp autumn air outside. In the corner booth sat a little girl, no more than 7 or 8 years old, her eyes bright, but her face marked by an innocent vulnerability. She wore a simple, pink hoodie, and her sneakers, though worn, carried a certain charm. She sat with her mother, who was distracted by her phone, likely handling some work emails as she sipped her coffee. The little girl's hands moved gently in the air, forming words that only a few could understand. But one person in the diner understood: Sarah, the waitress. Sarah had worked in the diner for over 5 years, always serving with a smile and a kind word. But when she noticed the little girl's hands moving in what seemed like a dance of silence, something inside her stirred. She quietly approached the table, her usual cheerful demeanor softened by the sight of the girl's gentle motions. "Thank you," the little girl signed, her hands forming the letters in perfect harmony. Sarah smiled, deeply moved by the gesture. It was the kind of simple, pure thankfulness that only a child could express. But what struck Sarah the most was how effortlessly the little girl communicated with her hands, as though it was second nature. "You're welcome," Sarah whispered, her eyes welling up for a moment. The girl's mother glanced up from her phone, noticing the exchange but not fully understanding. She simply smiled at Sarah, her mind occupied with the stresses of her daily life. But little did they know, a man sitting just a few booths away had been watching this small act of kindness unfold. The man, impeccably dressed in a sharp suit, looked up from his laptop. He was the kind of man who blended into the background, powerful, successful, but always staying out of the spotlight. As he saw the little girl's sign language, his curiosity was piqued. He wasn't just a CEO of a tech company. He was a man who had built his life around control, precision, and success. But something about this moment, this simple exchange between a child and a waitress, moved him in ways he couldn't explain. He had grown up in a world where emotions were often buried beneath the surface, where success was measured in profits and not in the kindness you shared. But now, as he watched the little girl and her mother, something inside him shifted. His fingers hovered over his phone, but instead of typing an email, he looked at Sarah, who was now refilling a cup of coffee. The CEO stood up, his movements deliberate, and walked toward the table. He didn't know exactly what he was going to say, but he felt a compulsion to speak. As he approached the table, the little girl noticed him. Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't stop signing. She simply looked at him with a soft smile, her tiny hands still moving gracefully in the air. The CEO cleared his throat. "Where did you learn that?" he asked softly, pointing to the sign she had made. The little girl paused for a moment, her small hands still in the air. She tilted her head slightly, then smiled. "My mom taught me," she signed back. Sarah, standing beside the table, watched the interaction with quiet awe. The CEO nodded slowly, his mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. What had driven this moment of connection? Why had he felt this pull to speak to this child? And why did it feel like a moment that would change everything? The CEO stood there for a moment, watching the little girl with wonder. He had asked the question without thinking, but now he found himself wondering why her simple gesture had struck such a chord with him. It wasn't just her ability to sign "thank you." It was the purity of the moment, the raw emotion behind her simple expression of gratitude. Something about it made him pause, and for the first time in years, he felt something stir inside him. His world of high-stakes meetings and business deals suddenly felt distant, empty even. He took a breath, shifting his attention to the mother who had been quietly observing the exchange from across the table. She was looking down at her phone, likely caught up in the weight of the responsibilities that came with being a single mother. Her clothes were plain, her demeanor tired, But there was something endearing about the way she gently encouraged her daughter, offering her the support she needed to communicate in a world that often didn't understand her. The CEO wasn't sure what to say next, so he simply nodded and smiled at the little girl before turning his gaze back to the mother. "Your daughter is very special," he said, his voice soft, almost reverent. The mother looked up, slightly surprised by the compliment. "Thank you," she said, her voice strained, though a small smile played on her lips. "She's been through a lot. It hasn't been easy for her, or for us." The CEO felt a pang of empathy, something he rarely allowed himself to feel. "I can imagine," he replied. "Raising a child on your own must be difficult, especially with all the challenges she faces." There was a long pause, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. The mother didn't respond immediately. Instead, she simply nodded, her eyes momentarily distant. The CEO could tell that she had a lot on her mind, just as he did. The conversation shifted to something more casual, and for the next few moments, they talked about the weather and the latest news in town. But the encounter lingered with the CEO, occupying his thoughts long after he had finished his coffee and stood to leave. As he walked out of the diner, he found himself reflecting on the exchange. He had met thousands of people in his life, but few had left an impression like this little girl had. It was as if her silent gratitude had reached into him, pulling out something he hadn't realized was missing. It was then that the CEO made a decision, one that would alter the course of all their lives. He would not let this be the end of their story. He walked out into the cool air. His mind made up. He would find a way to give back, to help this family in a way that went beyond a passing moment of kindness. His company, after all, had the resources, and his position could make a difference. The next day, he called his assistant. "I need you to get me the contact information for a family I met yesterday," he said. "A woman and her daughter. The daughter, she uses sign language. I want to help them." His assistant hesitated, but only for a moment. "Of course, sir. I'll have it for you right away." As the CEO waited, his mind raced with ideas. He wasn't sure exactly what form his help would take, but he knew it would be more than just a donation or a charity check. This was personal now. He had seen something in that little girl, something he hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. And he wanted to be a part of that. The following week, he met with the mother and daughter in person. He arranged for them to come to his office, and when they arrived, the CEO was waiting for them with a warm smile. "Thank you for coming," he said, ushering them into his office. "I've been thinking about you both since we met." The mother looked surprised, unsure of what to expect. We didn't expect anything." The CEO smiled again. "Sometimes, the best things in life come when we least expect them." He gestured to the seats in front of his desk. "I want to offer you both something that could change your lives. I believe your daughter deserves a chance to achieve her dreams, and I want to help make that happen." The mother blinked, her voice barely a whisper. "What do you mean?" The CEO leaned forward, his tone serious but kind. "I'm offering to sponsor your daughter's education, to give her the resources she needs to pursue her passion for sign language and teaching. I can connect you with the right people, the right programs. And I want to help you, too, so that you can focus on what matters most, your family." The mother stared at him, her eyes filling with tears. She had been struggling for so long, never knowing if they would have enough to make ends meet. And now, here was a man offering her a lifeline, a chance for her daughter to reach her full potential. The little girl, sitting quietly beside her mother, signed "Thank you," once again, her hands graceful in the air. The CEO smiled warmly, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment wash over him. He had given them hope, but more than that, he had given them a chance to thrive. And that, he realized, was the greatest gift he could ever give. As the days passed, the little girl, Sarah, and her mother, Linda, could hardly believe the changes unfolding in their lives. What had started as a simple act of kindness, a small thank you, had turned into something far more significant. The CEO, Richard, had kept his word and was not just offering support in the form of financial help. He was offering them a new beginning, a chance to thrive in ways they had never imagined. The opportunity was overwhelming, but it was also a dream come true. For Linda, it was a bittersweet moment. She had been struggling for so long, trying to provide for Sarah and give her a chance at a better future. The weight of the daily grind had worn her down, and now, a door had opened that she never thought possible. But there was hesitation too. Could they really accept help from a stranger? Richard had insisted, however, that his offer was genuine, and over the following weeks, Sarah began her lessons in sign language with the best instructors, receiving a scholarship that covered everything, from tuition to materials. Linda, on the other hand, began to feel the weight of her own doubts lifting as she started working with a mentor who helped her secure a stable job, allowing her to focus on what mattered most, her daughter's future. One evening, Richard invited Linda and Sarah to his office for a special event, a charity gala he was hosting for underprivileged children who needed opportunities to succeed. He had arranged for Sarah to be a guest of honor, where she would meet other children like herself. When Linda and Sarah arrived, they were greeted with warm smiles and a sense of excitement that Linda had never seen in Sarah before. The young girl, shy at first, was drawn into the activities, meeting other children who shared her dreams. Sarah's eyes sparkled as she signed and laughed with the others, and for the first time, Linda saw a glimpse of the confident, strong young woman her daughter was becoming. As the evening went on, Richard found himself standing by the window, watching the event unfold. His mind kept returning to the moment when he had first met Sarah and Linda, how he had been struck by the simple, pure gratitude Sarah had shown. He had always prided himself on being a successful businessman, someone who could close deals, manage millions of dollars, and lead with authority. But none of that had prepared him for the power of kindness, for the quiet strength that Sarah and Linda possessed. The next day, Richard met with Linda privately. They spoke about the progress Sarah was making, and Linda thanked him again for everything he had done. But there was something in her voice, something that spoke of a deeper connection that had formed between them. "I don't know how to thank you for all this," Linda said softly, looking at Richard with gratitude. "You've changed our lives." Richard smiled gently, but there was a hint of emotion behind his calm demeanor. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "You've given me something I didn't know I was missing." Watching Sarah grow, seeing how much she wants to give to others, it's made me realize that what I've been doing all these years, working, making money, wasn't enough. I've been so focused on success that I forgot what really matters. Linda looked at him in surprise. "And what matters?" she asked, genuinely curious. Richard paused, his gaze softening. "What matters is making a difference in people's lives, not just building an empire. It's about connection, love, and kindness. It's about helping each other grow." His words lingered in the air, filling the room with a quiet weight. Linda, who had always struggled to trust others, felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. Richard wasn't just a CEO. He was someone who had learned the true meaning of giving, of investing in people, not just projects. Over the next few months, Sarah flourished. She became more confident in her sign language skills, and her dream of helping others who were deaf started to take shape. Linda, with Richard's support, was able to pursue her own career goals, ensuring a better life for her family. But the most important change was in their relationship. What began as a business arrangement, an act of kindness, had blossomed into a deep, unspoken connection between them. They had helped each other in ways that neither could have imagined, and though they had come from different worlds, they had found a common ground. As Sarah prepared for her first public speaking event, sharing her experiences with other children at a local school, Linda looked at Richard with a new sense of understanding. "You've made all this possible," she said softly. "But you've also given me something I never thought I needed, a family." Richard smiled, his heart swelling with pride as he watched Sarah prepare to take the stage. He had found something far more valuable than wealth. He had found a purpose. And in that purpose, he had found a family he never expected. As months passed, the life that Linda and Sarah had once struggled to build slowly began to take shape in ways they had never imagined. With Richard's help, they had found stability, but what they had also found was something far more precious: the sense of belonging, of being part of something greater than themselves. Linda had secured a steady job, one that allowed her to support Sarah without sacrificing her dignity, and Sarah was thriving, her passion for sign language and helping others growing with every passing day. The charity work she had started doing with Richard's company became more than just a side project. It became her calling. She was inspiring other children, showing them that being different wasn't something to hide, but something to be proud of. Linda couldn't remember the last time she had seen her daughters so happy, so full of hope. They had built a life that felt stable, secure, and, for the first time, full of love. But despite all of this, something had shifted within Richard. He found himself visiting their small apartment more often, just to see Sarah smile or to talk to Linda. At first, it was just to check on their progress, to see how the charity work was going, but soon, he began to realize that there was something else, something deeper pulling him towards them. He had never been one to show his emotions, and the world he came from didn't leave much room for vulnerability. But as he watched Linda and Sarah, he couldn't help but feel a sense of completeness that he hadn't experienced in years. It was a quiet Saturday evening when it all came to a head. Richard had invited Linda and Sarah out for dinner to celebrate Sarah's upcoming speech at a local conference for children with disabilities. The event would be her biggest opportunity yet, and Linda was beaming with pride as she adjusted Sarah's dress, making sure everything was perfect. When they arrived at the restaurant, Sarah, dressed in a beautiful blue dress, was a picture of confidence, standing tall as she signed thank you to the waiter with a bright smile. Richard, watching from across the table, felt something stir within him, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years: pride. But it wasn't just pride in Sarah's accomplishments. It was pride in the family they had become. As they sat down to eat, the conversation was light, filled with laughter and warmth. Linda noticed a change in Richard. He wasn't just the successful CEO anymore. He had become something more: a friend, a confidant, a part of their lives in a way she hadn't expected. She looked across the table at him, a sense of gratitude welling up inside her. "I never thought we'd be here," she said softly, her voice almost lost in the noise of the busy restaurant. "I never thought I'd be able to give Sarah this kind of future." Richard met her gaze, his eyes sincere. "You've done more than give her a future, Linda," he said. "You've shown her what it means to be loved, to be cared for, to be supported. That's what matters the most." Linda's heart swelled as she realized the depth of his words. It wasn't about the money, the charity work, or even the opportunities. It was about the love they had found in each other, the support that had built a bridge between their two very different worlds. "Thank you," Linda whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for believing in us." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, everything seemed to stand still. As they finished their meal, Richard knew that he wasn't just part of Sarah and Linda's journey. He was an integral part of their family. That night, as they walked outside into the cool evening air, Richard turned to Linda. "I want to do more," he said, his voice filled with determination. "I want to make sure that what we've built, what Sarah has worked so hard for, is just the beginning. I want to help even more children like her." Linda smiled, her heart full. "You're already doing more than enough, Richard." But Richard wasn't done yet. "I want to make sure that Sarah has everything she needs to succeed," he said. "I'm not just talking about education or resources. I want to make sure she knows that no matter where she goes in life, she's never alone. And I want to be there every step of the way." The words were simple, but the promise behind them was profound. Linda knew that this wasn't just a promise for Sarah. It was a promise for them all. They had come a long way, and now, as a family, they had the chance to go even further. The future was full of possibilities, and Linda, Sarah, and Richard were ready to face it together. The following weeks were filled with progress and excitement. Sarah, now more confident than ever, began working with other children at the charity, teaching them sign language and sharing her story. Her passion had ignited something in her that she never knew existed, a sense of purpose. She was no longer just a little girl facing challenges. She was becoming a role model, someone who inspired others with her resilience and determination. Linda, on the other hand, had found her own sense of peace. With the steady job Richard had helped her secure, she was able to provide for Sarah without the constant stress of wondering if they would have enough. But more than that, she had found a new sense of confidence. She had once thought of herself as just a mother, just someone trying to get by. Now, she realized she was capable of so much more. One evening, as Linda was helping Sarah with her homework, the doorbell rang. It was Richard, standing on their doorstep with a bouquet of flowers. He had a smile on his face, one that was both gentle and excited. "I was hoping we could talk," he said, his voice soft but confident. Linda stepped aside to let him in, her heart racing. It had been a while since they had spoken about anything personal, but she had noticed the subtle changes in him, how he seemed more at ease, more open. They sat down at the kitchen table, and Richard took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he began, "about everything that's happened, about the difference we've made in each other's lives. He looked at Linda, his eyes sincere. I don't think I ever really understood what it meant to be a family. To truly be there for someone, not just in the easy moments, but in the tough ones too. Linda felt a lump in her throat. She had heard the words, but the emotion behind them struck her in a way she wasn't prepared for. Richard continued, I want to be more than just someone who helps from a distance. I want to be a real part of your life, of Sarah's life. I want to be there for you both, every step of the way. Linda's heart swelled as she looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, she saw the man who had once been driven solely by his work. But now, she saw someone who had learned the true value of family, someone who was ready to give of himself, not just his resources. Richard, she whispered, her voice trembling, you already are a part of our lives. You've been more than we ever expected. Richard smiled, his eyes full of warmth. I want to take this a step further, he said. I want to make sure that Sarah has all the opportunities she deserves. I want to help her build the future she's worked so hard for, and I want to make sure you both know that you have me, that we're a team. Linda reached for his hand, her heart full. You've already given us so much, she said softly, more than we could have ever imagined. And for that, I'm grateful. Richard squeezed her hand gently. This is just the beginning, he said. I'm not going anywhere. Over the next few months, Richard's involvement in their lives grew even deeper. He was there for every important moment, from Sarah's first public speaking event at the local school to the quiet moments at home, where they shared laughter, stories, and dreams. Richard became not just a supporter, but a true part of their family. And as the seasons changed, so did their lives. Sarah's speech at the school was a turning point for her. She stood in front of a room full of students, teachers, and parents, her heart pounding. But her voice strong as she spoke about her journey and how sign language had given her a voice. I want to help other children like me, she said, her hands moving gracefully in the air. I want to show them that no matter how different we may seem, we all have something important to say. The room was silent as everyone watched her, captivated by her courage. When she finished, the applause was overwhelming. Linda stood in the back of the room, tears in her eyes, as she looked at Sarah, her little girl, who had once struggled to find her place in the world, now standing tall and inspiring others. Richard was there too, watching with pride, his heart swelling with admiration for the young girl who had come so far. That night, as they drove home, Sarah turned to Richard. Thank you, she signed, her eyes bright. Richard smiled at her in the rearview mirror. You're the one who did all the hard work, Sarah. I'm just glad I could be a part of it. Linda looked at both of them, her heart full. She had once thought that family was just about blood, about shared history. But now, she realized that family was something far more beautiful. It was about love, support, and the willingness to stand by each other, no matter what. And with Richard by their side, they knew that the future was full of endless possibilities. The months that followed were filled with growth, new experiences, and challenges. Sarah, with the confidence Richard had helped her find, began to take on more public speaking engagements. She spoke at charity events, at schools, and even worked with local organizations to teach sign language to children. Her voice, though silent, was powerful, and the impact she made on others was evident in the grateful smiles of the people she helped. Richard, proud of her progress, found himself more deeply involved in their lives than ever before. What had started as an act of kindness had turned into a bond he couldn't have predicted. He was no longer just a wealthy CEO offering help. He was a father figure, a mentor, and a partner in every sense of the word. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Sarah asked a question that had been on her mind for a while. Richard, she signed, her hands moving. Quickly, do you ever wish you had a family when you were younger? Do you wish things had been different? Richard paused, his hand resting on his glass of water as he thought about her question. It was a question he had never really allowed himself to ask. He had always been focused on his career, on building his empire, and never really stopped to think about the family he had been missing. I used to think that success was all about business, Richard said after a moment, his voice quiet but steady. I was driven by ambition, by the idea that I had to prove something. But now, looking at you, Sarah and Linda, I realize that true success is about the connections we make, the love we share, and the lives we touch. I never had a family growing up, not in the way I would have wanted. But what I found with you both, it's more than I ever expected. Linda, who had been listening quietly, smiled softly. She had seen the change in Richard, how he had gone from being the successful, distant CEO to someone who understood the importance of love, support, and family. It had taken time, but Richard had opened his heart in ways she never thought possible. "You've given us more than we could have ever dreamed," Linda said, her voice full of warmth. "You've not only helped Sarah and me with our dreams, but you've shown us what it means to be a family, to truly care for each other." Richard met her gaze, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I didn't know what I was missing until I found you both," he replied. "And now, I can't imagine life without you." As the evening drew to a close, the three of them sat together, savoring the moment, knowing that they had created something beautiful. They had built a family from the ground up, one that was founded on love, kindness, and mutual respect. And as Sarah continued to grow and find her place in the world, Linda and Richard knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The following year, Sarah's work with the charity had grown significantly. She had been invited to speak at national events and had even started a mentorship program for other children with disabilities. Linda, with the stability Richard had helped her achieve, was able to pursue her passion for education and work part-time as a teacher, inspiring young minds every day. And Richard, now more than just a businessman, had found a new sense of purpose in the lives of the people he loved. He spent his days working with Linda and Sarah, helping to bring their dreams to life, and ensuring that the future they had all built together was secure. One evening, as they gathered in the living room, Sarah turned to Richard. "I want to help even more people," she signed, her hands moving with determination. "I want to create a world where everyone has a chance to be heard, to be seen." Richard smiled at her, his pride evident. "I think you already are, Sarah," he said. "You've already made a difference in so many lives. And I'm here to help you make even more change." Sarah beamed at him, her heart full. She had come so far from the shy little girl she once was, and now, with the love and support of her family, she knew there was nothing she couldn't do. Linda watched them both, her heart overflowing with love. She had seen the changes in Richard, in Sarah, and in herself. And she knew, deep in her soul, that they had created something extraordinary. The bond they shared was unbreakable, and no matter what the future held, they would always have each other. It was not just about achieving dreams anymore. It was about creating a life together, one full of love, support, and endless possibilities. And as they all looked toward the future, they knew that they had found something truly priceless. A family, bound by love, and united in their shared journey. As time passed, the bond between Linda, Sarah, and Richard grew stronger, but the next chapter of their lives was about to present them with a challenge neither of them had expected. Sarah's success with her sign language advocacy and her work at the charity had brought her into the public eye, and soon, news outlets started reaching out for interviews and feature stories. At first, Linda was proud of how far Sarah had come, but she began to feel a deep sense of unease as the media coverage increased. She had never been comfortable with the attention, especially when it was directed at her daughter. Despite Richard's reassurances, Linda found herself feeling protective, wanting to shield Sarah from the scrutiny of the outside world. One evening, as they were sitting in their living room after dinner, Sarah looked up from her homework. "Mom, I've been asked to speak at a big conference next month," she signed, her hands moving with excitement. "It's about inspiring other children with disabilities. I'm so nervous, but I really want to do it." Linda's heart swelled with pride, but the familiar knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach. She had seen how powerful Sarah's voice could be, but the idea of her daughter standing in front of so many people, opening herself up to judgment and criticism, was terrifying. "Sarah, are you sure?" Linda signed back, her voice full of concern. "This is a huge step. The spotlight can be overwhelming sometimes." Richard, who had been quietly listening, leaned in with a smile. "Linda, I understand how you feel, but Sarah has already inspired so many people. This is her moment. She's ready for it." Linda looked at Richard, feeling a mix of emotions. She knew he was right. She had seen Sarah's growth, seen her transform from a shy little girl into a confident young advocate. But as a mother, it was hard to let go of the protective instinct that had guided her for so long. Sarah caught her mother's gaze and smiled warmly. "Mom, I know you're worried, but I'm not doing this alone. You and Richard will be with me every step of the way. I want to make a difference, and I need your support to do that." Linda's heart softened as she watched her daughter, her courage and determination shining through. For so long, it had been Linda who had been the protector, the one who shielded Sarah from the harsh realities of the world. But now, it was time for Sarah to take her place, to stand on her own 2 feet, and share her voice with the world. "I'm proud of you, Sarah," Linda signed, her hands shaking slightly. "I'll be right there with you, every step of the way." Over the next few weeks, they worked together to prepare for Sarah's big conference speech. Linda helped Sarah rehearse, while Richard offered his advice, guiding her through the process with a calm, supportive presence. The day of the conference finally arrived, and the trio traveled to the venue together. Sarah dressed in a beautiful outfit that made her look every bit the confident young woman she had become. The conference hall was filled with hundreds of people, and Sarah's nerves began to show as they walked through the doors. But Linda, sensing her daughter's unease, took her hand. "You've got this, Sarah. Just speak from the heart." Sarah nodded, her hands moving quickly as she signed, "Thank you, Mom." As Sarah took the stage, the crowd grew silent, waiting for her to speak. She stood tall, her eyes scanning the room filled with strangers. And then, without hesitation, she began to sign, her hands moving gracefully through the air. "I want to tell you all a story," Sarah began, her voice soft but confident. "A story about how I once felt invisible, how I used to be afraid to speak because I thought no one would understand me. But I've learned that we all have a voice. It may not always be heard in the way we expect, but it's there. And when we use that voice, we can change the world." The room was captivated by her words, her courage, and the sincerity in her eyes. As she spoke, Sarah could feel the weight of the world lift from her shoulders. She wasn't just sharing her story for herself. She was sharing it for all the children who felt like they didn't have a voice. As she finished her speech, the crowd erupted into applause, and Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with pride. Richard, standing in the back of the room, watched her with tears in his eyes. This moment, this transformation, was everything he had hoped for when he first met Sarah and Linda. He had always believed that helping others was important, but now, he saw that it was more than just a charity project. It was about changing lives, empowering people, and giving them the tools to make their voices heard. After the speech, Sarah and Linda were surrounded by people who wanted to meet her, to thank her for her inspiring words. But it wasn't the attention that mattered to Sarah. It was the impact she had made, the way her story had touched others. And as she looked over at Richard, who was standing with a proud smile, she knew that this was just the beginning. The world was waiting for her, and she was ready to step into it with the love and support of her family by her side. The months following Sarah's speech were a whirlwind of new opportunities, growth, and challenges. Sarah's confidence had reached new heights, and with Linda and Richard's unwavering support, she was able to take on more speaking engagements, traveling to different cities to inspire others. Her message about using your voice to make a difference had resonated deeply with people from all walks of life. At home, the dynamic between the 3 of them had shifted in ways that Linda had never imagined. Richard, who had once been the distant CEO, had become a constant presence in their lives, more than just a financial supporter. He was now an integral part of their family, attending Sarah's events, offering guidance, and showing up when they needed him most. It had taken time for Linda to fully accept this new reality, but over time, she began to see that Richard's intentions were sincere. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Linda looked at Sarah and Richard, a sense of contentment filling her heart. "I never thought this would be our life," she said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. "We've come so far. We've built something together that I never thought possible." Richard smiled, his eyes filled with warmth. "I never thought I'd be here either, but I'm glad I am." He turned to Sarah, pride evident in his expression. "You've taught me more than you'll ever know, Sarah. You've shown me that success isn't just about business or money. It's about making a difference. It's about love and connection." Sarah smiled, her hands moving gracefully in the air as she signed, "Thank you, Richard. You're a part of our family now." Linda reached over and squeezed Sarah's hand. "You've given us more than we could ever ask for. We've always been a family, but now, with you by our side, it feels like everything has come full circle." As they sat there, together, Linda couldn't help but reflect on how far they had all come. There had been moments of doubt, moments when she wasn't sure if they would make it. But now, looking at the life they had built, she saw that all the struggles, the sacrifices, and the challenges had been worth it. They had found something far more precious than wealth or success. They had found each other. The following year, Sarah's work continued to grow. She had started her own foundation to help children with disabilities, providing them with the resources and support they needed to succeed. Linda had continued her work as an educator, and Richard, now fully invested in their lives, helped guide the foundation and ensure it had the impact it deserved. But despite all their successes, there was still a part of Sarah's journey that hadn't been fully realized. She wanted to teach at a school for children with disabilities, to be a mentor and a role model for those who needed someone to believe in them. Linda had been supportive of Sarah's decision, but Richard wasn't so sure. "Are you sure this is the right path, Sarah?" Richard asked one evening. "I know you want to make a difference, but teaching full-time, especially in that environment, can be challenging. It's not an easy path." Sarah, her determination unwavering, signed back. "I know it won't be easy, but this is where I belong. I want to help the kids who feel like they don't have a voice, just like I did. I want to give them a chance to be heard." Richard looked at her, his heart swelling with pride. He had always admired her determination, her refusal to back down from her dreams, and in that moment, he knew that Sarah was going to make an even bigger impact than he had imagined. "If this is truly what you want, then I'll support you, Sarah. You've already proven that you can handle anything that comes your way." Linda nodded in agreement. "We're with you every step of the way." The decision was made. Sarah would follow her heart and become the teacher she had always dreamed of being. And with Richard and Linda by her side, she knew she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The next few months were filled with new beginnings. Sarah started teaching at the school, where she quickly became a beloved figure among the students and staff. She poured her heart into her work, helping children who had been overlooked or underestimated to find their voices and their strengths. Linda, too, felt fulfilled in her role as an educator, teaching young minds to believe in themselves. Richard continued to be their pillar of support, managing the foundation and working behind the scenes to ensure their success. As Sarah stood before her class one day, she couldn't help but smile. She had come so far from that shy little girl she once was. She had found her voice, and in doing so, she had given others the chance to find theirs. She had created a ripple of change, and the world was better for it. As Linda watched Sarah from the doorway, she felt an overwhelming sense of pride. They had built something together, something that no amount of money or success could ever replace. A family, bound by love, support, and a shared journey towards something greater. As the years passed, Sarah, Linda, and Richard's bond only deepened. What had started as a simple act of kindness had blossomed into a life filled with purpose, growth, and love. Sarah's impact on the children she taught continued to ripple out, and the difference she made in their lives was immeasurable. She had become a beacon of hope for many, her story proving that anyone, regardless of their background or challenges, could make a difference. Linda, too, had found her own strength, finding fulfillment in her career while continuing to support Sarah and Richard. The woman who once felt lost and unsure now stood tall, confident in her role as a mother, a teacher, and a partner. As for Richard, he had transformed in ways that no one had anticipated. The driven, business-minded CEO was now a man who valued family above all else. He had discovered that success wasn't measured in profits or titles, but in the connections we make and the love we give. Together, they had built a family, one that was bound not by blood, but by love, trust, and unwavering support. One evening, as they gathered around the dinner table, Sarah signed with excitement, her hands moving quickly. "I've been invited to speak at a national conference about the power of kindness and how it can change the world," she signed, her face glowing with pride. Richard and Linda exchanged proud glances. It wasn't just the speech that mattered, it was the message she was spreading. The message that kindness, no matter how small, could create a ripple effect and change lives. "That's amazing, Sarah," Linda signed back. "I'm so proud of you. You've come so far." Richard, his voice filled with emotion, added, "You're the reason we're all here, Sarah. You've shown us all that love and kindness are the greatest gifts we can give." The following day, Sarah stood in front of an audience filled with people from all walks of life. The room was packed, the air thick with anticipation. As she began to speak, her voice strong and clear, Sarah reflected on how far she had come. "When I was younger, I never thought I could make a difference," she began. "I thought I was just another child with a disability, overlooked by the world. But then I learned something powerful. My voice mattered. It didn't matter how it sounded or how it was heard. What mattered was that I used it." The audience sat in rapt attention, moved by her words. Sarah's speech wasn't just about overcoming personal challenges. It was about empowering others to do the same. It was about showing them that they, too, could make a difference. As the speech came to an end, the room erupted in applause. Sarah stood tall, her heart swelling with pride. She had done it. She had shared her story and changed lives in the process. Linda and Richard, standing at the back of the room, couldn't have been prouder. They had watched Sarah grow into the incredible young woman she had become, and now, they were witnessing her change the world. After the event, as they walked outside, Sarah smiled up at Richard and Linda. "Thank you for everything," she signed. "You've always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Linda wrapped her arms around Sarah, her eyes filled with tears. "You've always had it in you, Sarah. We're just glad we could be here to help you find it." Richard nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "We're a family," he said, his words simple but powerful. "And no matter where life takes us, we'll always be together." As they walked back to the car, the world seemed full of possibilities. They had come a long way from that first meeting, that simple act of kindness that had changed everything. Together, they had built something beautiful, a family, a legacy, and a future filled with hope and love. And as Sarah continued to inspire others, Linda and Richard knew that the journey they had begun together was far from over. It was just the beginning of something even greater.